Hello and welcome to A Spirited Debate. I'm Lauren Green. The 115th Congress has just been sworn in, and while Republicans still maintain control of both the House and the Senate, there's something else that's been maintained from the last Congress and many before. According to the annual Pew Forum's Faith on the Hill survey, despite an electorate that's becoming less religious, Congress is still quite faithful, with nearly the same percentage of members who identify as Christian today as there were in the 1960s. Joining us to break down the numbers is Gregory Smith, Associate Research Director of the Pew Center. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you for having me.
What does the survey actually show us? Can you kind of break it down for us? We've got a graphic down for our viewers as well.
Well, as you mentioned, the key takeaway is that the big majority of members of Congress continue to identify themselves as Christians. In fact, 485 of the 535 members of the new Congress describe themselves as Christians, Protestants or Catholics or Mormons. There are 30 Jewish members of the new Congress, there are 3 Buddhists, there are 3 Hindus, there are 2 Muslim members of the new Congress, and just 1 member of the new Congress who describes themselves as religiously unaffiliated, as having no religious preference at all.
And that's very interesting because that number in the general public is about, I don't know, 20% or 15%, isn't that right?
Yeah, it's amazing. If you look back over time, the percentage of adults in the general population who say they have no religion, who identify themselves as atheist or agnostic or as just nothing in particular when it comes to religion, that group is growing very rapidly. In fact, today, as many as 23% of all adults in the United States say they have no religion. Compare that to Congress, where just 1 person, just 0.2% say the same. That's a really striking comparison.
We're going to get some analysis just in a little bit, but what changes do you see are really significant over even from last year to this year or just over time?
Well, if you look back over time, the share of people in Congress who say they are Christian is really quite steady. About 95% of members of Congress in the early 60s said they were Christian. Today, about the same share, 91%, describe themselves as Christians. But within that, there has been some change. Most notably, the share who describe themselves as Protestants has been declining, while the share of members of Congress who describe themselves as Catholics has been going up. In the early 60s, 3/4 of Congress were Protestant and just 1 in 5 were Catholic. Today, 56% of members of Congress are Protestant and 31% are Catholic. So that's a big change within the Christian composition of the Congress.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Gregory, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And for more, we're going to be joined now by Dr. Alex McFarland. He's a Christian speaker and author of Stand Strong America, Courage, Freedom, and Hope for Tomorrow. Welcome, Alex.
Well, thank you for having me, Lauren.
Well, you listened to Greg talk about the numbers, but why do you think Christians dominate Congress so heavily?
Well, Christianity is the dominant faith perspective of a majority of Americans, maybe as many as 130 million adult American Christians. But over the last 8 years, I think there's been a feeling among evangelicals and Christians of all strata to get more politically engaged, and many have wound up in Washington.
You know, why, if on paper there is such religious harmony, a lot of Christians, there is such reality, the reality is a rancorous political divide in Congress. Why is that?
Well, even though in the media I think Christianity is very underrepresented, as a person who travels pretty much incessantly, I can say Christianity still is the default faith of the American people. It was the worldview of our founding fathers, and for 241 years now it's been the dominant faith position, and I guess it's only natural that this would be reflected in the electorate.
You know, and do you think now that more non-Christians will be elected? You've got Bernie Sanders, he was Jewish heritage but more secular, very close to getting the Democratic nomination. There's also a growing Muslim population. We've got Keith Ellison from Minnesota, one of 2 Muslims now in Congress. How do you see these changes happening? I mean, do you think this number is going to grow of non-Christians in Congress?
Well, you know, of those that are, say, 30 and younger, as they grow and as they continue to become more culturally and politically engaged, you know, I think unless there is an education of many people about how Christianity has been part and parcel of our DNA from the very beginning, yeah, I think it probably will change. What I care about, though, as an American, as a minister, obviously, the souls of people, but as an American, I care about the Constitution. And a whole new generation does need to be informed about how a Judeo-Christian worldview shaped our Constitution and our greatest traditions for 2 centuries plus, and that's something we desperately do not want to lose.
Okay. All right. Alex McFarland, thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful. Wonderful coverage.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right. And for complete coverage on the new Congress, check out foxnews.com. I'm Lauren Green, and thanks for watching.